mating net occurs when the king can't escape from getting mated because our pieces are taking away the escape squares. That means that we are forcing checkmate on the king, or we're using the forced checkmate threat against the enemy pieces to win material. Let's give a small example of this from a game that my student played the other day. In this position, my student with the white pieces played rook h2 check, checking the king and forcing the king to g7. But after knight e6 check, the king goes to f7 and now has a ton of escape squares to get their king to safety. Instead, the correct answer is to play queen h4 check. The same move, relatively, forcing the king to g7, but this time we can take care of those escape squares by taking this pawn on e7, using our freshly put queen on the h4 square to go to e7. And now the king cannot escape out west and has to go back to its hiding spot, either to h8 or to h6. And if king h8, we have rook h2 checkmate because our queen is taking up all the escape squares. And if king h6, we have the same pattern because the queen is taking up all the escape squares as well. Welcome to another episode of 10 Levels of Tactics, in which I serve you 10 tactics of different levels, ranging from 0 elo to 2500 plus. In level 1, for the elos 0 to 500, we start off with a small opening. In this game, the white pieces went e4, to which black responded with the Caro-Kann defense c6. d4 ensues d5, and now bishop d3. Black came in with knight f6, and now white advanced e5, attacking this knight. The knight moved back to d7, and after e6, forking these two pieces, the black pieces mistakenly took this pawn on e6. And in this position, it is white to play and win. Pause the video to solve the problem. I'll give you 5 seconds. White to play and win. In this position, it is key to recognize that the enemy king is cramped by its own pieces, meaning it does not have a lot of escape squares. And so, seeing that this diagonal is newly weak, given that this f-pawn has emerged to e6, we can see that the white pieces can force checkmate with queen h5 check on this king, forcing the response g6. This is the only move to prevent checkmate right now. And here you have two options as the white pieces. Either bishop takes g6 check, forcing h takes g6, and then queen takes g6, checkmate on the king. Or, if you're feeling a little bit more stylish, you can go with queen takes g6 check. Why is this more stylish? Because here you're sacrificing a queen and winning the game even though you are queenless. With checkmate, bishop takes g6. Congrats if you solved level 1. Here I present to you level 2. Elos 500 to 1000. In this position, it is white to play and win. Pause the video to solve the problem. In this position, the king on g8 is certainly confined to the white piece's presence. But how do we convert this into an immediate win by checkmate? In this position, you had to observe that queen takes f8 was a reasonable move to lure the king to the f8 square in order to clear not only the h6 square for the next piece to go there, but also to weaken the king and allow the rook to get off of e8, the enemy rook, so that we can get this e8 square. And now we play bishop h6 check, which forces the king to g8, and now we have rook e8 checkmate. Which brings me to level 3. In this position, it is white to play and win. Pause the video to solve the problem. I'll give you 5 seconds. In this game, the mating net is not obvious. Here you could see that there are little fossils reminiscent of a battery that can form on this diagonal. If you can get these two to ally together, maybe via knight f5, you can threaten checkmate on g7 or h8. This would be incorrect because your queen is currently threatened on this e5 square. So there's a little bit of a rush. We have to move our queen. And that's where you need to come up with a mating net made on your own. And so here with the tremendous move, queen g7 check, forcing the king to take, Now we can action these two pieces into creating a valuable mating net. With this very nice next move, knight f5 double check. A double check in chess, by law, forces a king move out of the opponent. So now this double check takes up not only f6, this escape square, h6 escape square, and h8, but forces the king back to g8. And here you have two options. You can go knight e7 if you found this with checkmate, or you can go knight h6 if you found this as well. Both are valid. Which brings me to level 4. Can you play like Michael Tal? In this position, it is white to play and win for the elos 1200 to 1400. I want you to solve this. Michael Tal had the white pieces in this position, which is quite obvious because he's attacking the king and he already sacked material. His bishop is attacked. You could have seen this, but it is not necessary to see this in order to solve the problem. Here, the solution is knight g5 check. We already know that this queen takes up most of the escape squares of the king, and that knight g5 check forces the outcome of this king to e8. And from then, we can do some trial and error to figure out the rest of the combination, but it is quite obvious that one check stands out. Here, queen e6 really forces 1, 2, or 3 moves out of the black pieces, and is the only real reasonable check in this position. If you saw king f8, we have queen takes f7 checkmate. That is checkmate on the spot and full points. If you saw knight e7, actually I should have done this last because it's the nicest one. Here we have queen f7 check that forces the king to d8, and here the king is going to escape via the escape square of c7. So it is very important to have your next check with the c7 square in mind. And here, knight e6 inflicts that beautiful desired checkmate. Okay, so what if king d8, the final move? And here we have the same mating net pattern. Knight f7 check, king c7, but this time we inflict checkmate with queen d6. And this rook that saves us taking up that last escape square on b6, and this queen also taking up that escape square on b8. Checkmate on the board. Here we go, level 5. Level 5, it is okay if you take a couple minutes, even 5-10 minutes to solve this problem. It is significantly harder than what we've seen so far in this 10 levels of tactics. In this position, it is black to play and win. Pause the video to solve for the elos 1400 to 1600. In this position, it is really not obvious that the black pieces have a forced checkmate, but believe it or not, it is the case. Here we have mate in 4 moves, and let me tell you how we find the solution. First of all, let's look at the weaknesses of this king. There are none. The king has a lot of escape squares, and that's why this problem is kind of tough to find. So we try candidate moves. We look at different moves that force different things. Rook g1 is nice, it covers a lot of the escape squares, but is not a forcing move, it doesn't check the king. Okay, what other checks do we have? Knight takes c3 is a probable looking move, check inflicted, but after b takes c3, it doesn't look like black have any follow-ups. Which brings you to candidate move number 3 that I would have liked for you to see this. It's rook takes b2. Removing the guard of this c3 pawn, which was the pawn on b2, and forcing a response out of the white pieces. Here, the white pieces have only 2 choices. The king can't go up to a3 because this bishop so valuably takes up that square. So okay, king a1 is a possible move. Rook g1 and rook d1 would be met with checkmate after 2 moves. So here, white is pretty much forced to take the rook. And now that I have said it, it is pretty obvious what the follow-up is, the only checking move in this position, which is knight takes c3. Check on the king not only does check, but also valuably takes up another escape square from the king. The square on b1 is taken, and now the king is forced to a square, which is always a good sign when you're calculating these in advance, because it helps you deduce the next move out of your opponent. And here, the enemy king goes to a1, and now we find the mate in 2 that is forced on the board. Rook g1 check. This king is in a mating net because the escape squares are already taken care of. And so after rook b1, that is forced on the board, rook takes g1 is checkmate. Congratulations if you solved level 5. Level 6 is a position from another very famous game played by Mikhail Chigorin. With the white pieces here, he was known as a very aggressive and attacking player. In this position, it is white to play and win. Pause the video to solve the problem for ELO's 1600 to 1800. I'll give you 5 seconds to pause. This solution incorporates a lot of the themes that we saw in this series in earlier videos. So here we have a mix of clearing, we have a mix of deflecting, and we have a mix of mating net. So it's very, very fun. The king is already slightly in a mating net, but it has one escape square. But albeit, this rook and this pawn and this bishop are doing a wonderful job of containing the king in a specific area, which is grounds for a mating net approach. And so how do we proceed here? Firstly, we have to find bishop c4, a really nice fork that also clears the e-file for this queen to be liberated from. This fork forces queen takes c4. And after queen takes c4, now we have the very nice move, queen e8 check, forcing another outcome out of the black pieces, which is knight takes e8. The knight is cleared or deflected off of the g7 square, which allocates or gives us this diagonal with the white pieces. And so here, now that the bishop and the rook sink in for this f8 square, they can team up for the final move of this combination, rook f8 checkmate. Welcome to level 7. We are reaching expert level chess puzzles. In this position, it is black to play and win. Pause the video to solve the problem. I'll give you 5 seconds. To be fair, I love this problem, which is why I included it at all costs. The king here looks really, really weak. It looks like it's already almost in a mating net. You have this bishop and this pawn that are really doing a good job at containing this king in a sort of zone, in a locked zone, which is a common theme for today. In this position, it is key to see that this king is almost in a mating net, but what needs to be modified? We need to place this rook on this square. So how do we go about that? It looks like it's so far away. We have to create a path for this rook to inflict checkmate on the king. And that path is going all the way back to our base camp, going all the way east, and then going all the way down for checkmate. A lot of travel for the young rook. So the first move of the solution is literally a5. a5 pressures this pawn on b4. And if you saw this, you need to see 2 outcomes from the white pieces. The ultimate shell defense, which I call, which is king h2 blocking everything mating net wise, and here just giving a pawn, and here if you evaluated that the black pieces gained a very deserving pass pawn and a very winning position, then you were right, and this is full points. You also needed to see what if white did b5, which is just responded to by rook takes, and b takes a5, which is also very critical. On b takes a5, it's important here to play very precisely. If you said rook b8 immediately, you were incorrect. Because here white has a tremendous defense, which is king h2, blocking everything. So what do we do first? We go h2. Such a beautiful, luscious move. This is pretending to be a mating net. It's pretending to be checkmate, which forces in and of itself king takes h2. And after king takes h2, we have the beautiful rook b8, which now on this open file, we are threatening checkmate in 2, which is super hard to defend for the white pieces, in fact impossible. Rook b8, and here the white pieces cannot escape. You'll see whatever the white pieces do, rook g1 is checkmate on h8. The king goes back to g1, rook h8, and you cannot block rook h1 checkmate. Even if you make an escape square for your king, you would need almost 2 moves and then a third one to escape via d2, because this is checkmate already on h1. Which brings me to level 8. Level 2000 to 2200. In this position, it is white to play and win. Feel free to pause the video to solve the problem. I'll give you 5 seconds. Here our goal, with the raise of our bishops here, and our ultimately really compelling 3 attacking pieces, and a secret 4th one, which we'll see later, will addition for checkmate. So let's see how it goes. First of all, we go up with bishop takes h7, a forcing move on this king that really just opens up the king and proceeds with a more forcing attack. If you said king h8, which is a possible move, anything with queen h5 or queen h3 preparing discoveries with checkmate are full points in this position. If you said king takes h7, which is, it's a must, you have to go king takes h7, now you have to find the follow-up queen h5 check, forcing king g8, and now bishop takes g7. All a must. Bishop takes g7 is a sensational second sacrifice. We are threatening checkmate on h8. You cannot do nothing here. Nothing meaning like b6, let's say, because then I would have checkmate. So if you saw f5, which liberates a square for the king and inflicts kind of an escape square, this is a very, very good move. Well done. Here you had to find the only winning move for the white pieces, queen h8 check, which forces the king to go up this escape square, and now bishop takes f8. And here black cannot take back the bishop because we have queen h7 check, a skewer which wins the queen. So okay, the second variation in this position is king takes g7, and this is the main line. You have to see this no matter what. Here white has queen g5 check, and now black has 2 possibilities. If you go to h7, I accepted rook c4 on the cusp, with rook h4 threatening mate. On the spot, this is winning, full points. Okay, and what if king h8? Well, here queen f6 check, king g8, or even king h7, just rook c4, same idea with rook h4, rook h8 checkmate. And then if king g8, rook c4 with then rook g4 check. And it is so hard for the black pieces to ever defend this. They can block, but we're just taking free material at this point. It is completely over. Go get some water, refresh. You're doing super well. Level 9 is approaching soon. Welcome to level 9. In this position, it is 2200 elo to 2500 elo. White to play and win. Pause the video to solve. I'll give you 5 seconds. Right out the get-go, we see that this king is quite in trouble. But how in trouble? We can't really assess that because everything is well defended off the naked eye, right? So we have to do a bit of trial and error in our brains and try to solve this. Rook takes g7 is the first move of this combination. Why? Because we have a reloader on g3. That's actually the type of tactic this is named like. And also we are removing the defender of the h6 pawn, ready for that queen takes h6 later on in the game. So this threatens mate in 1. The black pieces are forced to go with this response, king takes g7. Forced acceptance of the sacrifice. And here the natural proceeding is to go rook g3 check. Here you are checking the king and forcing the king to one of 2 squares. If the king goes back to h8, we have checkmate in 1. So it really forces the king to h7. So far so good, right? Forcing the king, limiting the king of the number of squares, and ultimately pressing hard with more and more pieces into the attack and taking out defenders. Here you should have seen, okay, if you saw bishop takes f7, this is the only other move I will accept in this position. Rook takes and rook h3 and it's over. And if you saw this, full points. Though the main solution, the main line, equally as good, even a little bit better, is bishop g6 check. Let's say king h8. We have check, king g8, and mate. Pretty easy, right? If the king goes to g8, we have queen takes h6 immediately threatening mate. And on pawn takes, we just have check, this, and mate. Or mate, depending, or mate. So bishop g6 check. Okay. We have 2 possible solutions here. We have 2 possible lines, So f takes g6 and king takes. If f takes g6, here we have to find rook takes g6. Such a beautiful move. It's the only winning move in that position, so give yourself full marks if you saw rook takes g6. Here we are threatening checkmate on h6, And it's beautiful because black cannot defend this. They can't defend this threat. It is checkmate no matter what black plays next move. Queen takes c3 is fine. Queen takes h6. You take here and threaten my rook. Queen takes h6, checkmate. It's all checkmate here. Okay, so finally, what happens on king g7? And this is probably the most beautiful and silent killer part of this combination. White goes bishop h7. If the king is on h7 here, and we don't have a bishop on h5, we can go rook h3, threaten checkmate, and because of this wall of 3 pieces, even 4 pieces, even 5 pieces, preventing any possible defender on h6, it would be winning. So the idea of bishop g6, king g7, and bishop h7 is literally to clear the bishop off of h5. Isn't that cool? Because after rook h3, this pawn is so undefendable. Alone at c, black cannot do anything to defend. And so here, the most reasonable defense is literally terrible. It's h5 giving mate in 3. The rest is mate in 2. You cannot defend against queen takes h6 coming in and queen h8. You can't. It's really crazy. Anything you play, queen takes h6, queen h8. And so here, if h5, rook takes h5 check, king g7, or even king g8. King g8 here, queen h6, and it's the same dilemma. Black can do anything in this position, but nothing prevents against these 2 mating threats in this position. If you solve this, congratulations. And if you learn from this and you're just here along for the ride to learn from these tactics, tu es le bienvenu. You are welcome. And now we move on to level 10. Level 10 is always the impossible final boss level. So we're just here for fun, but if you really want to try to solve this, this is a solvable chess problem that even the engine always has a difficulty to solve. In this position, it is white to play and win. Pause the video to solve the problem for ELO's 2500 plus. I'll give you 5 seconds to pause. It's white to play here, which immediately strikes because we are down a rook and we have to win this game. So where do we start? There is a famous mating net that starts in this position that has to do with only the bishop and queen, right? And this is very valuable to know. I've done many checkmates from this mating net, which is bishop h6, h7 check, forcing the king to h8, and then the discovery bishop g6 check. It's bishop g6, not anywhere else on this diagonal. Bishop g6, you want to control f7, king g8, queen h7, and then queen takes f7 checkmate. This is a known mating net. The problem is here that this f7 square is taken up. So what do we do? This requires an infinite amount of creativity. Honestly, I saw the solution of this problem and I was like, how can I not include it? It's got everything. Mating nets, deflections, clearings, everything. So this is the solution. Bishop h7 is the first move. You are forcing the outcome of this king and essentially keeping this king in a virtual mating net. Very nice. Now you have decoyed the king to an undesired square. So we have number 1 tactic is the decoy. Number 2 tactic here is going to be the discovered check. Because here, wherever we make a bishop move, it's going to be a discovered check on this king. And so here you're going to use this discovered check to your advantage. This rook is pinned. Another thing that you need to know in this position. This comes with observation. You have to observe the full position and take it completely when starting out this chess problem. And so one thing you can cure in your position is to do this really nice discovered check on the king and also an interference. Here you are intercepting the rook's pin on your rook to activate your rook into this attack. Which means your rook can go east, north, or south without questions. Without passport, you can just go. You can go. And so this is a defensive move and an attacking move at the same time. Something that I call the everything move. If you search up the everything move on YouTube or on my YouTube channel, you'll find that I have made several videos on the everything move, and it's one of my favorite themes in chess that I have invented. I've invented this type of move. I've named it. I don't know if I invented it, but it's... So check here, once again, forces this king to g8. And so now, what do? We have newly liberated this rook. So why don't we again make a mating net threat, rook g2 check, mimicking checkmate, and forcing this outcome out of the black pieces, because otherwise it's checkmate. Bishop takes g2. And now, this bishop was lured to g2 and deflected off the defense of this f7 square. This bishop on g2 conveniently is aligned on this second rank. It's a crazy problem. It's aligned on this second rank, which means that this bishop is not pinned when it gets out of there. So again, this is an interception tactic. And so now that this bishop is liberated, we can inflict check here on the king, forcing this king to a square, always a good sign in a mating net. And now discovered check, we have to go attacking this f7 square and discover check on this king. King goes to g8, and now we apply a forced mate in 2, finishing off the final mating net of this video. Queen h7 check, forcing this king to f8, and then queen takes f7, checkmate.